The bin Ladens eventually had to withdraw. Bush's dad, though, stayed on as senior advisor to Carlyle's Asia board for another 2 years.
As unseemly as it seems to know that George H.W. Bush was meeting with the bin Laden family while Osama was a wanted terrorist, well before September 11th. It's very discomforting for Americans to know that. George H.W. Bush is a man who has obviously incredible reach into the White House. He receives daily CIA briefings, which is the right of any ex-president, but very few ex-presidents actually exercise that right. He does. And I think in a very real way, they are benefiting from the confusion that arises when George H.W. Bush visits Saudi Arabia on behalf of Carlyle and meets with the royal family and meets with the bin Laden family. Is he representing the United States of America, or is he representing an investment firm in the United States of America, or is he representing both? This company is about money. It's not about conspiracies to run the world or engineer political maneuvering and things like that. It's about making money, and it's about making a lot of money, and they've done very well.
To get you on the record on this question, in the White House view, there's no ethical conflict in former President Bush and former Secretary of State Jim Baker using their contacts with world leaders to represent one of the most well-known military arms dealers, the Carlyle Group.
The President has full faith that his family will conform with all proper ethics laws, and will act properly in their conduct.
Okay, so let's say one group of people, like the American people, pay you $400,000 a year to be President of the United States. But then another group of people invest in you, your friends, and their related businesses $1.4 billion over a number of years. Who are you going to like? Who's your daddy? Because that's how much the Saudi royals and their associates have given the Bush family, their friends,
how are you, sir?
And their related businesses in the past 3 decades.
Seems like a very nice reunion with friends.
Is it rude to suggest that when the Bush family wakes up in the morning, they might be thinking about what's best for the Saudis instead of what's best for you or me? Because $1.4 billion just doesn't buy a lot of flights out of the country. It buys a lot of love. Sooner or later, this special relationship with a regime that Amnesty International condemns as a widespread human rights violator would come back to haunt the Bushes. Now, after 9/11, it was an embarrassment, and they preferred that no one ask any questions.
The investigation should have begun on September 12th. There's no reason why it shouldn't have. 3,000 people were dead. It was a murder, and it should have gotten started immediately.
First, Bush tried to stop Congress from setting up its own 9/11 investigation.
It's important for us to not reveal how we collect information. That's what the enemy wants, and we're fighting an enemy.
When he couldn't stop Congress, he then tried to stop an independent 9/11 commission from being formed.
The president's position was a break from history. Independent investigations were launched within days of Pearl Harbor and President Kennedy's assassination.
But when Congress did complete its own investigation, the Bush White House censored 28 pages of the report.
The president is being pressed by all sides to declassify the report. U.S. officials tell NBC News most of the secret sources involve Saudi Arabia.
We have given extraordinary cooperation with Chairman Keane and Hamilton.
We haven't gotten the materials we needed, and we certainly haven't gotten them in a timely fashion. The deadlines we set have passed. Will you testify before the commission?
This commission? You know, I don't testify. I mean, I'd be glad to visit with them.
What it will do is the hole that's in my heart and has been in my heart since September 11th. I lost my husband, 15 years. I'm now by myself. I need to know what happened to him. I know what I got back from the autopsy. That man was my life, and I have no plan. I was taking a class, and they asked me what was I going to do in the next 5 years. And if I'm not doing something with this, I don't know what reason I have to live. So it's very important. Very important. Okay.
Ignored by the Bush administration, more than 500 relatives of 9/11 victims filed suit against Saudi royals and others. The lawyers the Saudi defense minister hired to fight the 9/11 families? The law firm of Bush family confidant, James A. Baker.
So we're right here in the center of three important American landmarks, the Watergate Hotel and office building, the Kennedy Center over there, and the Embassy of Saudi Arabia. Yeah. How much money do the Saudis have invested in America, roughly?
I've heard figures as high as $860 billion.
$860 billion?
Billion.
That's a lot of money.
A lot, yeah.
And what percentage of our economy does that represent? I mean, it seems like a lot.
Well, in terms of investments on Wall Street, in American equities, it's roughly 6 or 7% of America. They own a fairly good slice of America.
Wow.
And most of that money goes into the great blue chip companies. Citigroup, Citibank is the largest stockholder, is a Saudi. AOL Time Warner has big Saudi investors.
So I read where like the Saudis have $1 trillion in our banks of their money. What would happen if like one day we just pulled that $1 trillion out?
$1 trillion, that would be an enormous blow to the economy.
Right.
Mr. Moore, can I speak to you for a moment, please, sir?
Yeah, sure.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. How you doing?
Steve Kimball, Secret Service. How are you
doing, sir? Yes.
We're just ascertaining information regarding. Are you doing a documentary regarding the Saudi Arabia embassy or chancery?
No, I am doing a documentary, and part of it is about Saudi Arabia.
Even though we were nowhere near the White House, for some reason the Secret Service had shown up to ask us what we were doing standing across the street from the Saudi embassy.
Here to cause any trouble or anything, and is that?
No, that's fine. We just wanted to make sure. We just wanted to get some information as far as actually what was actually
what's going on. Yeah.
I didn't realize the Secret Service guards foreign embassies.
Not usually, no, sir.
No. Do they give you any trouble, Saudis?
No comment on that, sir.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll take that as a yes. All right, good. Thank you very much. Thanks for the work.
It turns out that Saudi Prince Bandar is perhaps the best protected ambassador in the U.S. The U.S. State Department provides him with a 6-man security detail. Considering how he and his family and the Saudi elite own 7% of America, it's probably not a bad idea. Prince Bandar was so close to the Bushes they considered him a member of the family, and they even had a nickname for him, Bandar Bush. 2 nights after September 11th, George Bush invited Bandar Bush over to the White House for a private dinner and a talk. Even though bin Laden was a Saudi, and Saudi money had funded al-Qaeda, and 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis, here was the Saudi ambassador casually dining with the president on September 13th. What were they talking about? Were they commiserating or comparing notes? Why would Bandar's government block American investigators from talking to the relatives of the 15 hijackers? Why would Saudi Arabia become reluctant to freeze the hijackers' assets? The two of them walked out on the Truman balcony so that Bandar could smoke a cigar and have a drink. In the distance, across the Potomac, was the Pentagon, partially in ruins. I wonder if Mr. Bush told Prince Bandar not to worry, because he already had a plan in motion.
You come in September 12th ready to plot what response we take to al-Qaeda. Let me talk about the response that you got from top administration officials. On that day, what did the president say to you?
The president, in a very intimidating way, left us, me and my staff, with the clear indication that he wanted us to come back with the word that there was an Iraqi hand behind 9/11, because they had been planning to do something about Iraq from before the time they came into office.
Did he ask about any other nations other than Iraq?
No, not at all. It was Iraq, Saddam, find out, get back to me.
And were his questions more about Iraq than about al-Qaeda?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He didn't ask me about al-Qaeda.
And the reaction you got that day from the defense secretary, Donald Rumsfeld, from his assistant, Paul Wolfowitz?
Well, Donald Rumsfeld said, when we talked about bombing the al-Qaeda infrastructure in Afghanistan, he said there were no good targets in Afghanistan. Let's bomb Iraq. And we said, but Iraq had nothing to do with this. And that didn't seem to make much difference. And the reason they had to do Afghanistan first was it was obvious that al-Qaeda had attacked us.